Hey everybody, David here, and today I want to do a video focusing on all the actors that returned for the latest episode of What If, Episode 7, What If Thor Was the Only Child. And we actually had a lot of actors return for this episode, a lot of actors that had already returned in some of the previous episodes, and a lot of first-timers. So let's get right into it, starting with the first couple of actors who have not returned. I like starting off with those ones. We always have to start off with the Watcher, who we know by this point is voiced by Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright has never appeared in any of the MCU movies before, but he is the main character of this show since he's the one narrating every episode, and maybe we'll get possibly more involved as the episodes go through. Next up is Frigga. Frigga was played by Renee Russo in the movies. She was not voiced by Renee Russo in this episode, though. She was played by Josette Eels. Next up is Hogan. Hogan is one of the Warriors 3. The Warriors 3 did return, and all three of them do talk. Unfortunately, Tadanabu Asano did not return to do the voice of Hogan in this episode. It was David Chen. For the voice of Frandl, Frandl was played by Josh Dallas and Zachary Levi in the first two Thor films. Josh Dallas was in the first Thor film. Zachary Levi took over for Thor: The Dark World, and then a little cameo in Thor: Ragnarok, probably because he bet the hand that fed him, and also because now he's Shazam. They didn't bring him back maybe for that reason. Josh Dallas, I don't know. Manifest got canceled, so why didn't they ask him back? Maybe they did. He just didn't want to return, but it doesn't matter. The third actor that now is playing Frandl is Max Middleman. Captain Marvel was also in this episode, and she was once again not voiced by Brie Larson, but was voiced by Alexander Daniels, who did make her first appearance in the third episode of What If. Next up is Volstag. Volstag was played by Ray Stevenson in the three Thor films. He was voiced by Fred Tatasciore. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he also did the voice of Drax, which he also returned for in this episode. Drax obviously was played by Dave Bautista, who let it be known to the world that he was not coming back for the What If series because he apparently wasn't invited. But the showrunner says we did invite him. He just, I don't know, there must have been some miscommunication or something. Next up, let's move to the actors that were in previous episodes that also were in the movies. Starting off with Loki, aka played by Tom Hiddleston. That's right, Loki. But instead of being the Norse god Loki, he is now a frost giant the way he was meant to be. So we got to see him in his frost giant mode, which was pretty cool. Nick Fury also returned in this episode, and yes, once again, he was voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, who clearly loves this role and wants to beat Hugh Jackman's record at playing a superhero the longest for as long as he can, and let's hope so too. Agent Phil Coulson came back in this episode, and yes, once again, he was voiced by Clark Gregg, who obviously returned from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which lasted 6 seasons, I think. Who knows? But yes, it's always great to hear Clark Gregg again. So Brock Rumlow also returned in this episode, and yes, he was voiced once again by Frank Grillo, who, you know, was angry that he was killed off in the movies, but he's happy that he's voicing the character now. And voicing the character is probably a little bit more easier anyways. Nebula also returned to this episode, and yes, she was voiced again by Karen Gillan. So that's awesome. Lady Sif also returned in this episode. She was once again voiced by Jamie Alexander. Howard the Duck was once again popping up in the show for his second appearance, and yes, he was voiced by Seth Green just like he was in the movies. Now let's get into some of the actors that returned but didn't show up for any of the previous episodes that we've already seen. This is their first time in the show, so this is really cool that we're getting this many actors late in the game when we're almost done this show. First up is Chris Hemsworth. That's right, Chris Hemsworth returns as the God of Thunder, Thor, and definitely brought a lot of that comedicness that we've seen and heard in Thor Ragnarok. Clearly, this is the Thor that Marvel loves. Next up is Jane Foster. Jane Foster was in this episode, and yes, Natalie Portman did return to do her voice. We already know that she is going to be returning for Thor Love and Thunder. She's going to play Lady Thor, so it makes sense that she would agree to come back and do the voice here. Darcy was in this episode, and it wasn't too long before since we saw her in Kat Dennings at the beginning of 2021. That's right, Kat Dennings returns to do the voice of Darcy, so that's awesome. So who knows if this will be the only time we'll hear Natalie Portman and Kat Dennings together, or, you know, maybe not physically, but at least their voices were together, so that's close enough maybe. Next up is the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster, yes, was voiced by Jeff Goldblum, who returned for a small little part, but it was still fun to hear him, so that was cool. Maria Hill, first time in showing up in What If, and yes, she was voiced by Kobe Smulders. Really nice to hear her come back. Korg was in this episode. You have to have Korg if you have Thor and the Grandmaster. So yes, Taika Waititi did return to voice Korg in this episode. Topaz returned in this episode. Topaz was a character in Thor Ragnarok, and yes, Rachel House did return to do her voice in this episode, which was really cool. Finally, Surtur. Surtur was in this episode, the big demon-looking like creature from Thor Ragnarok. And yes, he was voiced by Clancy Brown. This shouldn't really be much of a surprise to a lot of people because Clancy Brown has been doing a lot of animation for a very long time. He has done live action stuff too, like Shawshank Redemption. He was the police officer in that, the security guard, the main security guard in that show or that movie. And he also has made appearances in like the Flash TV series, Lost, and many other things. But the biggest voice that I always associated with him was the voice of Lex Luthor in Superman the Animated Series. He has done a lot of Marvel and DC and Star Wars. He even recently appeared in The Mandalorian Season 1, where he played the demon, another demon-looking creature. But yeah, it's always great to hear Clancy Brown's voice. His voice is very distinct, so it's really nice to know when he is a part of a project that we all enjoy. With that being said, everybody, that was this video. Are there any actors that you think I left out? I think I caught them all because I looked up IMDb, and this is the entire list that it said that was also in the credits at the end of the episode. So, but if there is anyone that I left out, let me know. With that being said, I want to plug in my Patreon supporters. These are the people that support this channel and, you know, want to see it grow. And you can be a Patreon member too, along with these 4 great people here. Thank you once again to my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. But yes, if you want to be a Patreon supporter too, you can go to patreon.com/DavidJordea, where you can pay a $5 tier or a $10 tier, whichever one you want. The $10 tier is more there for generosity. Maybe one day, maybe I'll update it if I ever figure out something to put up there. Something that I feel comfortable putting up. No weird dance because I'm too embarrassed for that. But yeah, if you can, that would be awesome. If you can't, hey, there's other ways of supporting this channel, like sharing a link and letting people know about the channel, give some awareness and stuff like that, you know, and like every video that you see, watch every video you see, and make sure to click on that notification bell so that way you can know when a new video is posted up, because maybe some of you don't know that a new video is being posted and then you forget about me. Don't forget about me. I'm making videos to have fun and entertain and to connect to my fellow fans. So connect with me just like I can connect with you. I hope that doesn't sound weird. With that being said, I hope you guys like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, everybody, take care.